Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am joined, as always, by the legendary Neurotoxin and Diggs. Hello, how are you?
Great.
Good. Awesome. We been off for 2 weeks, but we have a new developer, show that Friday's show. Actually went into quite a lot on the event system, which I suspect we'll spend some time on. But yeah, so and some Q&A. I don't think anything was necessarily like big deal Q&A, but I think there was some talk on crafting and things like that. But anyways, so yeah, where do we start?
Well, I'll start by saying I was really happy to hear some confirmation that we'll be getting some systems, event type style systems that I was really jazzed about for EverQuest Next. How what the players are doing can trigger these events, either by doing too much of something or not doing enough of something, and then all of a sudden, later down the road, that can result in a monster horde attacking cities and stuff like that. I've been hoping for that, and some of it, I think, has the potential to push me into wanting to PvP and possibly risk corruption. If I need to stop someone from doing something that's going to trigger this larger event, then the larger event might take precedence, and I might be like, well, I don't want to mess you up, but if you don't stop what you're doing, it's going to be worse for the rest of the server, and I got to protect the rest of the server. So
I get a feeling that if somebody's engaging in that sort of activity, they're already flagged and you can just freely attack them because it's already that sort of battleground he was talking about, where it isn't this like special cordoned off area with a scoreboard, but a battleground, a battlefield, a place where there's an event in progress and it requires some amount of contest of players versus other players or other entities or some combination therein in order to be resolved. And so, yeah, I could see that exactly sounds like the sort of thing, Diggs, that you would, get into for maybe like an hour or so.
Yeah. And even more, not so much because I think people are kind of flipping out over the term event, but I think the event system is not just the big thing where the monster horde event, but I'm talking even about the little parts that lead up to it. So those first goblin skirmishes where you just see a ramp up in goblins or whatever, and then you start realizing, oh, maybe someone's overkilling the goblins, or maybe somebody's doing something that's causing the goblins to, come out and want to attack more than they normally do. Those kinds of things where you're just trying to figure out, okay, you're doing something and it's causing this to happen, or you're doing this, and so now this plague is occurring, and I've got to stop you from doing that so we can lessen the plague, that kind of stuff, before we get the full-blown thing. So lots of people are saying they want events to be rare, but I think the events that come up, some things are just triggered by how we, the buildings that we build, or the nodes reaching a different stage. All kinds of stuff is triggering these things. So it's not just one big event. Like they said, they want events to be memorable that we're going to talk about for years to come. But I think the lead up to those events, can be smaller. And in some ways, we're trying to kind of prevent them from becoming the big thing, but sometimes they will become the big thing. But even those little things are part of the event system.
Yeah, and that's you said a lot of the things that I'm really excited about for it too. The idea that it isn't going to be a rare sort of thing. There probably will be rare events among them, but the idea that they're going to be catered to the population and activity of the area, it sounds to me like every single region will have multiple, let's call them sockets. I think they might have said, or if not, a socket or a landmark or something.
Yeah,
That
one
the
of the
things,
terms he uses is predicate. Predicate,
yeah,
like, yeah.
but I'm talking about like the physical sort of distribution of them. That there's going to be multiples of them throughout the land. There'll be more obvious point of interest, like that tower over there. There's something going on with it, even without investigating it. Things will happen there. Maybe not right this moment, but it'll be involved with something at some point. I think that's the sort of thing we're going to see, is that these different places here and there, little events will start to happen, and then a little more happens, a little more happens. Maybe maybe a volcano starts to smoke a little bit, and you hear a dragon roar, and if nobody goes and checks it out, you're going to find that there's a whole new happy dragon family waiting to emerge and bust out and knock down this entire kingdom and its vassals and everything nearby, because that's what dragons are going to do when they emerge as a family from a volcano that you didn't address. And even if you do address it, you walk in, you finally sneak past all the elite dancing bears or whatever, and you finally get to that dragon at the end. Well, what are you going to do? What are you and your intrepid squad going to do against a raid boss? You're going to go back, you're going to get a crew together, and you're going to try to take that thing down. And if you can't do it because you don't have the social clout, or you're a bunch of jerks that people don't like or whatever, they might just one-up you. They might just go and do it themselves. Maybe they'll actually go there and do something where they talk to the dragon and say, hey, we actually love that you guys are destroying this area. What can we do to help? We're from far away. This is doing good for us.
Mm-hmm. The sound triggers, all that sounds super. I feel like you're going to get people very paranoid. They're going to be walking around and
be afraid. Be very afraid.
Think they hear a rustle, and then they spend an hour of their night trying to figure out, did I just trigger an event? And no, you did not. And then,
but that's fine. That's the experience.
Or maybe you did, and you don't know.
Well, no, that's exactly the thing. It's like Dungeons and Dragons. It's like when you're playing with a group that's overly cautious, and you spend 3 hours going through 5 doors, killing 2 skeletons, and that's it. And it's mostly just like checking the traps, checking the room for information, this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, that's the stuff that's going to slow gameplay down. Is like, well, wait, am I doing something, or did I do something that now has lasting effects on the local area? Did I just do a bad thing?
I'm wondering how these all sort of tie in, like how many will be active at any one time. Is it a per server, a per zone, specific zone? I'm really curious, like how many things are possible at any one given time, because that's, I think, really what starts to distinguish the servers from each other.
Probably at least one per node area. Mm-hmm. All the time there'll be at least one or more at some different stage that's going on. I don't think this is the sort of thing where you won't find them if you are looking for them. That I think you will, if you are actively looking for events and things and going about, you'll either find them, or perhaps you'll manufacture the consequences. If you overmine an area, specifically in enemy territory, knowing that it's going to lessen their resources and agitate some sort of creatures in the area that don't like the area being mined out, that sort of strategic sort of thing can be initiated by players going in and mucking up an area. So I really like all the levels of possibilities that are coming out of this, and the amount of agency it actually does give the players. And in terms of how many are going at once, though, I get the feeling that they have a general idea, but probably haven't, like, technically and test-wise locked in a number, because it's going to be what's going on the surface, what's going on in points of interest, what's going on in the underrealm areas. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, even a verticality to it. So that's one of the other things that's interesting to me, the idea of things only happening like out at sea in certain areas, and having a tidal cave or something that emerges, and you got to get your water breathing on to get in there.
I would assume it's almost like a decision tree or behavior tree. Like you have a few at the very top, sort of meta world events, and it could be as simple as did three of these areas, three metropolises, do they satisfy three specific interactions? But then within those three, there's even further branches. I'm just really curious to learn more. We're supposed to get an article, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This week?
Soon.
No, I
don't remember if they specifically said when.
I'm pretty sure Maggie said this week, but
okay.
I think it might even be the document that Stephen was reading from. So I think it's already written, probably. So I would think it would probably be within a week.
Well, I'm ready to test. I'm starting to get more and more restless with this process. But the more and more that I see that they want to a semi-polished state to be before, which I totally get. I think they talked about that for a little while too.
Yeah.
Not wanting to put something out there that once it's across content creators just makes people turn away. But I'm getting more and more restless. I feel like we're failing to mention with the event system something important. Somebody that was mentioned.
Oh. Yeah, no, there were a lot of names that were mentioned. On the technical side, I know we've got Chris Justo, Bucky, Jason Neal were called out. Over on the design side, let me see if I can find that list here. That was Amy, Clayton, Scott, Chris, and recently Tony. And when last names started being mentioned, Chris Toltorf, well, hey, I know that guy. He also worked on that game about that one that one Hawaii place, and also worked on that game that then ended up going from an MMO to a tabletop game. And then there was that other one with where we only got to work on it for about 6 months before it went under, the game that shall not be mentioned. And then going back even further, Rift. Funny story. He was there. This is the sort of event system he actually wanted to have, but that's not what they ended up going with. It's his story to tell. I'll let him tell it. Just suffice to say, we could have had this the whole damn time, everybody. And now we're finally getting it, and I'm so happy, and I'm thankful to Steven and everybody. They're actually going to bring the sort of system together that's really going to bring, what we know to be multiplayer online games forward to the next dimension. This event system is something that I've been craving to see for a long time. I know a lot of people that have been in our audience, that have been on our shows as guests, our hosts that we've had in the past, people we've interviewed. Everybody's been wanting something like this, something dynamic, something where there is actually some feedback and things being driven by what the players do and what they don't do. And it's the sort of thing that makes a game that you actually do want to play in and treat the people as, some sort of community, because their actions do matter. What they do does matter. It might turn out that the person that you pissed off in your first year of playing because you kept, PKing him every time you saw him, makes the best of a certain kind of vitamin, and you ain't never going to get it from them because you were a jerk. And they've got a short list of who can actually buy their stuff. So there's there's a lot to it that I'm really excited to see, and with the event system being so dynamic, all the different things playing into it, how the node progression system, which they were talking about, is going to work. That your core buildings, the what were they calling them? Not system buildings. Service buildings, where the service buildings are at, where your housing is at, is now going to be kind of in static locations instead of the city upgrades and suddenly your place shifts 2 blocks over. That's not going to happen. Some places are going to have their permanence, and then the rest of the node builds around it and in between it in different ways, instead of the way that they were working it before, where everything kind of shifts as if you've got buildings on putty that you can just push around and do what you want with. So I'm actually really glad to hear that development, and I'm excited to see how that's going to work too. But then with that, as they did specialize and develop in different ways, that's also going to play into different events that can occur in the area, and how the events can play out in the area. There can be other modifiers if you've got relics. If you're a place that's ready to potentially accept a relic and you'd have to try to steal one from someone else. All that sort of fun stuff. What sort of governance system you have and how far along you've gotten with, moving along to the next step with that system. It's all stuff that is going to be really exciting to see play out. And I'm glad to see, glad to hear that it's going to be stuff that and the new combat advancements and creature AIs and stuff that are going to be going into Alpha 2 whenever that comes around. And the crafting and the surveying. They were saying about surveying being a thing.
Wait, you've said a whole bunch of stuff. We've got like 5
Okay. I was laughing. Okay. I'm internally laughing because this is Steven all over again.
Yeah. I'm basically just giving like Steven mode. It's like, because I just spent the last couple hours, watching everything up to the environment part of the video, and I just wrote the notes about it. So
if you haven't had a chance to watch the video, he just starts with one question, and for like 10 minutes, everybody's just sort of like, what? Like it's just one thing to the next.
Yeah, that's why my notes are so dense on this one. If you go to the Discord channel, you'll see this one might need to go into a Word doc or something because it is big.
Yeah, because
one thing that you said, Neuro, a while ago, that the volcano situation, that just reminded me of that volcano that we could see off in the distance. Like that was the great thing about going into the Alpha 1, and you could just see this volcano way across the field, and you could run to it and run up it, which is awesome. But at first I was like, yeah, because we see that almost all the time, and then if all of a sudden it starts smoking, what is that going to be like? And then something you just said is, what if there's a dungeon there or whatever, and you go inside and you steal a relic from there, and that's what starts the smoke to rise and all that stuff. That's kind of the fun things to think about, is what could we be doing to start all these little events. Someone on the forums was mentioning that they wanted to have a mechanic for starting people on patrols and scouts and all this stuff, so that we're constantly looking out for stuff. And I was thinking, I don't think we need a mechanic. I don't think we need a mechanic for that. I think that's just something we'll kind of naturally do. But it also gives max level adventurers something to focus on besides just repeating the same dungeons and repeating the same raids. Gives them reasons to go into lower level areas because, they want to take care of what is to them trash, so that it doesn't snowball into something bigger. So there can be reasons for max level adventurers to be.
That's careful. That has to be a very careful balance, right? So when I was doing my whole fishing thing, did a lot of the Final Fantasy 14, and they have a event system, not necessarily this in depth, but on the map, all of a sudden things pop open and you can run to it, participate, and it was very frustrating. when you'd have these high level adventurers kind of coming in, and just because for you that's experience gain and loot and other things, and so that I feel like that will need to be somehow balanced out. The same with not to hijack your train of thought here, but because he also mentioned that with harvesting, or I read somewhere with harvesting too, that that you'll still use low level harvesting materials in higher level. So the idea being you'll have reasons to go back to those zones, but it's sort of the same thing as a lower level player. That could get very frustrating when you're trying to make money to buy something brand new, but everything's being sort of taken by those higher level players.
But they have a mentor system, so there's reasons for high levels to be working together with low levels. So that's just something that popped up while you said that. So.
The other thing is some of the stuff with the higher levels. I don't think it's necessarily going to be that you're going to stop seeing the low level resources in a higher tier area. You might even see them in higher concentration, but also guarded by tougher creatures. So it's the risk reward of, well, yeah, you're going to get more iron in this tier 4 area than the tier 2 place that you came from, but you're also going to have to fight for it. So, be ready for that. That's the sort of thing I think that'll help balance it out, as well as what they were saying with an event that would bring higher level players to a lower level area. It sounds like it's the sort of thing where they're basically going to use the local town as a base camp, and then just go off and adventure towards that spot until they complete whatever needs to be done there. So if that's a raid battle, then they come, they get their stuff together, they go fight, they get wiped maybe 1 or 2 times till they realize what they need to do, finally get it complete. Wowee, there's fireworks, somebody gets a rare blueprint or some rare material, and then the aftermath of that event plays out over the next however long after the cooldown elapses.
But yeah, there's a lot of balancing that's definitely going to happen, which is why even whenever this Alpha 2 begins, it seems like it's going to have to last at least. It seems like it's going to have to last 6 months just so we can test through everything. And then how many months are they already waited a year after Alpha 1? How much time are they going to need after Alpha 2 to go through all this stuff?
Another year?
It's supposed to be a persistent. Alpha 2 is supposed to be persistent, so maybe it won't matter too much. Phantom, you had me thinking of deharvesting areas. So
yeah, we can move to the other thing they talked about with land management. Is that where you're headed?
Yeah, that's what you brought to mind. I was kind of done with my part, so that was a good segue if you want to segue into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, right? So that starts to fall into what I'm interested in: harvesting, crafting, processing. And there were 2 things actually they mentioned within crafting. One, he just kind of broadly, well, several things, but he said broadly that they're implementing a lot of changes on the crafting front. I don't know what that means, but that's basically what we saw was the very core loop of gather, click, equip. But there were 2 things he mentioned. One that he didn't spend any time on was surveying, which I'm very interested in what surveying means. He just sort of washed over the topic. I'm like, what? Wait, go back. What the hell's that? What do you mean survey? I'm assuming there'll be some sort of talent or some sort of ability, whether that's an innate character trait or something you create through crafting, some way to survey the area to get either a exact idea or a rough estimate of what's there and how much, I would guess. I mean, that's what a survey would be. I'm really interested. There was nothing more said other than the fact that there'd be surveying. So super interested in that. Although as a farmer, I don't know that I would use that much, but because I'll be pretty well contained. But an interesting idea. Not unheard of, right? I mean, there's plenty of other games that have some sort of way to spam looking for, something, a beacon that sends out looking for information about what you can gather.
Yeah, but it sounds like more information than that. and
Yeah.
maybe something to help you realize whether you should, not only can you, but should you.
Yeah, I get the feeling that it might be assessing like the depletion rate, the state of the materials, how long it's going to take for it to replenish, that sort of stuff. Which that's nice to know if you can get in an area and know for like the next, I don't know, 250 yards or meters. I can't remember. Is it metric or not? But whatever, to be able to know kind of in a small area approximately the profile of the harvestables, so you know, well, if everything's kind of depleted right now, why keep cutting trees in the place that's only going to drop like 2 to 3 logs when I can go 15 minutes north of here and I know those trees are dropping a juicy like 8 to 10 logs and tree sap and other sorts of things. So it's the sort of thing where you would want to kind of check in on the areas that you're going, and they were saying about that to have a migratory sort of thing to it, that you'll have the gatherers kind of get in an area and they'll kind of hit it up for a little bit, and then when it starts to get depleted, or when the land manager chimes in and says, "Hey guys, get the hell out of here," then they, move on to the next area, try to find the next hotspot. Someone starts raking it in until everyone else finds them and homes in and harvest the hell out of it. And then they go on their merry way to do it again after they get run out of there or decide it's a good idea to get going.
Yeah, I guess we hadn't mentioned this specific land management is system is what they're referring to, which also didn't seem to entirely be about, just depleting things too fast. It actually it sounded as though you can gain skill enough that you can, I guess, maybe learn ways to still get things out of it without depleting it as fast.
Yeah. I hope we get a little bit more information on that one in the coming months, as they are saying that a lot of the stuff that's confirmed in this milestone and that's kind of like up and running is still not at a state that's ready to like really talk about and stuff yet. So that stuff will all be doled out as they actually confirm the systems.
I do like the idea behind it of making you have to go other places. I think that's again, when we talk about systems in place to make you have to revisit old zones, because that always seems like such a waste. I mean, you log into, I guess World of Warcraft kind of addressed that a little bit by making the levels scale to the player and not the zone, which is one way to do it. But, it used to be pre that, there was nobody anywhere for the first 50 levels. And it seems like so much content's just wasted. Like, how can you reuse it?
And I like that this is, addressing that, not only just addressing it from, well, let's take WoW and put a +1 on it, but that it's the entire, comprehensive system of what the game is and how it works, that it needs to have these events. It needs to have player interaction. It needs the nodes to tier up and get knocked down. Like that's part of how the game's going to progress, how the world progresses. And we might not even realize what are like the big story arcs that are going on as we go through things, until after, a year or two down the road, we take a step back and we look at what's happened across the different servers and how they've progressed, and then realized, oh wow, these things happen here and they progressed this way. These folks had some sort of pandemic that they couldn't get under control, and their stuff went that way, and the different ways the different servers are going to go.
Well, this land
that's what's so exciting.
Well, and the land management, you can turn that into like a PvP tactic, right? So if you really, really, really want to mess with a local, whatever stage it is, village, let's say, you just take a group of people and you just go strip mine just everything, and just remove whatever they have. Because now they have to go further out for resources. Do they just abandon the village? Does it get attacked? But then we talked, the last thing we talked about, the event system. If I take all the fish out of the streams, does that trigger the bear population that needs the fish to survive to just start attacking the human population. Can you trigger events by exploiting the land management system? So
Yeah, the way the example that they had from EverQuest Next that I loved was Kithakor Forest. So the Dark Elves go to Kithakor Forest to harvest dryads. They steal their life energy and they take it back to their cities and they transmute that into shadow energy, and they use that shadow energy to power their stealth mechanics. And I was like, oh, well, I might be killing some dryads because I certainly want to power my stealth. But then if you kill too many dryads, you siphon the life off, that awakens shadow demons. It breaks their bonds, and then the shadow demons rampage through the area, and they're killing anything alive, including dark elves. So then the dark elves are going to have to band together as well to try and reshackle the shadow demons. So yeah, just going into an area and trying to strip mine it might not be the best thing because, as you said, it might trigger an event, and you might not know that when you think of doing it. So that's part of the fun, I think, is triggering stuff and not realizing you're triggering stuff.
Yeah.
So the last thing I'll say, there's been some comments about Star Wars Galaxies. That does seem to be a lot of what they base some of these things off of. I know in previous discussions, I think I mentioned Jeffrey Bard was sort of big into. I'm sure others are as well. There is, obviously, it's no longer active. There is an emulator. I forget the name of it. I think it's just Star Wars SWG Emu. I'm not sure, but
something like that.
So
yeah, it's been going for a bit.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular.
I would say if they're actually going the Star Wars Galaxies route, that would mean there's different grades and varieties of all the materials. So there would be, such and such iron or such and such glowing flower or whatever, it's got a specific type to it that only exists for a short period of time, and then once it's harvested out, that's it. And so when you use it to you can refine it and you get the higher quality, you get whatever the quality and features of the material are, and then that'll go towards whatever that's going to do in the crafting process. But that's a lot of data to be tracking. I think it might also be a little bit more data tracking and specificity than they necessarily want to be doing, and maybe want to have a little bit more of this stuff is like iron's iron, it's your skill that makes it better, instead of, fancy iron A and fancy iron B, and you put them together and you get, fancy iron alloy, that makes super steel or whatever. But you've only got enough units to make 2 sets of armor. But with Star Wars Galaxies, there were a lot of attributes to the minerals. It would have density, its malleability, various like physical properties of it, and then those would contribute to different qualities when it was used in different parts of the crafting process. But then another part of the Star Wars Galaxies thing that I think we're maybe going back to on this a little is the idea that you have a blueprint and then you're filling in things that fit for the blueprint. So if you need any metal for, an amulet, you've got copper, great. You can make a copper version of the amulet. You've got steel, great. You can make a steel version. You've got tin. Well, hope it doesn't get hit, but sure, you can make a tin version of it. Might have some magic properties that you need. I like that sort of thing, and I like the idea that this could be part of the crafting system itself, that the quality and grade of the things that you're putting in, how well refined and what sort of like quality states that are going in will give the different results. And to give them credit, New World did have some of this, and I liked it. It wasn't a full sort of thing. It was kind of like half-assed where you would have the base material that something's made out of. If you're making leather armor, you would have to use that grade of leather. But all of the other materials you could use higher or lower grades of. So if you wanted to make a leather armor that's in approximately this range, but make it really, really good, you would use a metal for the metal parts that's maybe 1 or 2 tiers higher, and you'd use some of the other components that are like the cloths that are 1 to 2 tiers higher, or like the rare versions of the same tier even, and you would end up getting a better version for your skill level than you would have otherwise been able to get. And so that's the sort of thing that I'm really hoping to see here, is the ability to use different materials in a sort of fixed recipe that, yeah, it's going to have to resolve to be a steel blade. So you're going to need some amount of iron and some amount of, coal and some amount of this and that. But other than the fact that it's going to be a steel blade, you get to actually kind of define the qualities of that steel that's going to be used for it. And you get to define the qualities of, maybe you're making it a full tang sort of thing. Maybe you're just doing like simple tang, so it's able to be pulled out and put into different hilts easier or something. I don't know what level of specificity we're going to get with that stuff. It sounds like they said you're going to be able to craft the appearance of it how you like. So if you're doing commissions, you can make it look like a scimitar or a straight long sword or something like that. I don't know how that's going to work. Maybe it's going to be a little like the DCUO sort of thing. Once you've seen it, made it once, or owned it once, you know it. And then you can make things of that style in the future. I'm excited to see how all of that's going to work. Like that's some really cool stuff.
I'm wondering about
yeah, go ahead.
how land management will interact with node type. Will we find certain types of resources in a scientific node versus a military node? But it also kind of has me wondering about the racial impact of a node. Like, would Nakua plant different seeds in a region than if Dunir were there, or if Pyre were there, so that we start seeing, based on the racial government, if that changes the kind of resources that start appearing, because a different culture prefers a different kinds of seeds, or they farm differently than the NPCs farm differently than a different culture. I wonder about that too. That could be interesting.
Yeah, that would be nice to see those sorts of differences. And I would imagine, Pyre definitely do things differently. They don't really seem to cut down trees to make things so much as plant a seed and then kind of tell it, have a conversation, teach it, train it, whatever, to grow into the thing they want, like their boats. So
I just mean for plants, not even trees, but I'm sure there
so
are
I would definitely imagine there's going to be some sorts of differences. Probably, I would imagine more like close to and in proximity of the node and or the kind of city itself. And then the further out you get from that, maybe you would see less of the sort of thing. Then again, it depends on what it is. Like maybe the religious nodes just have like, holy ghosts everywhere that you can interact with, and they only exist in those places. So it's like,
Yeah, but those are NPCs. I'm wondering specifically about resources, how that would affect resources.
Well, you could actually, this is a really good segue into season tech, which they also started to very briefly. I think they just showed some pictures, but looking how they can implement 4 different seasons, because that could tie in here, Diggs, right? So you could,
yes.
I guess part of it depends on when the flip occurs as far as the node, what season they're in. So if you do flip to a different race having the majority, and that sort of changes the structure of the buildings and the plants, well, then maybe you just if that happens in summer, is the tech so that you can just let it go until it all dies in the winter, and then it just grows back under the new sort of structure that the other New Orleans
Culture.
has. Or if that might be too complex, I don't know. But
Yeah, well, when I think about that, I'm wondering about how the different cultures might celebrate the same holiday. So, like, I think, is it Diwali? Diwali, it's an Indian celebration.
Festival of Colors.
Yeah. That happens, I think, around the same time as Halloween. So I just wonder, maybe, again, Pyre would celebrate something that's similar to Diwali, and I don't know, Dunir would celebrate something closer to Halloween, or um, uh, so it depends. It's not even just because I'm hoping that uh, when we do real world um,
yeah,
holidays, they aren't all Fourth of July and Halloween and Easter, and I'm hoping we get some
no, that's a good
holidays
point.
from around the country, or around the world. I mean, I hope we get, they are
Yeah,
usually they're just
represented
limited
different
to,
ways.
yeah. Usually they're just limited to stuff in the United States. So I hope we
Even
get
more
broader.
specifically, like United States and Christmas, Easter. What were some of the other ones that they
Again,
like
Fourth
to
of
do?
July. We get
Fourth of July,
Halloween,
Halloween,
Valentine's Day.
of course. Some of them will do St. Patrick's Day.
Hmm.
He didn't sound too excited about all of these traditional holidays, though. I like some of the big ones that sound like, yeah, we'll do it, but they did not seem super. I mean, throwing all these things out.
Okay, if what Maggie was saying is right, that it's 4 times normal sort of time progressing game time versus real world, then it's basically just that all of the holidays are cyclical and happen, like the big version of it happens once every 4 years. When you do it that way, it's still going to line up the same way, regardless of when it happens throughout the year. It's just there'll be 3 versions of it that are like the lesser version, and then when it comes around to the real world version of the holiday, then it'll be the real version of it, like the big version.
But would you even need that? Because Seasons throws so many wrenches into this, right? Like as you're playing the game, are you going to really recognize that it's winter and there's no Christmas event? Are you really going to pay attention to that when there's no Christmas happening in real life, right? I recognize that in the game it's December 25th, if that's what they say, but there's no like real life correlation. So I imagine it would actually.
So it's not a Santa simulator. So whatever would be the Christmas era events,
Winter festival or whatever.
yeah, it'd be your winter festivals and stuff. And so it might just be that they're just not very pronounced versions on the 3 off years, and then the 4th one again, doing like a cyclical sort of thing.
Because here's what I worry about with that is that you're going to have far too many freaking holidays of some sort happening all the time.
Well, they don't all have to be as celebrated as the others.
If you're doing it 4 times a year.
Yeah. No, I think
That's
kind of an interesting sort of thing. It's nice for there to be events that are going on constantly, that the NPCs are responding and react. Actually, I really like that, to break the Shenmue cycle, instead of just being everybody who gets up and does their routine throughout the day and then goes home, and the node hasn't been knocked down or something since the last day, then they'll try to do it again the next day, sort of thing. That there will be breaks and gaps, that if there's like general peace and a lack of change in an area over the course of a couple of weeks, one of those little minor holidays will kind of fall in and at least give something that the NPCs pay some amount of attention to in their own cultural way.
Yeah,
it also kind of creates like a player crafting economy that relates to the different holidays, where you could actually be creating the different items for celebration and rituals and stuff that you're providing to the region so they can celebrate it harder or whatever.
Could also be based again on racial government, and maybe to have the big one, you have to have a city or a metro.
Yeah.
And it's going to be whichever, maybe if it's that Pyre celebrates some form of Halloween, if they don't have a city or a metro, that doesn't get a big one. I don't know, especially in the off years. But I wonder too, if Dunir and Nakua celebrate Dunsandkill holidays differently.
Probably.
And then that also makes me wonder about Sanctus holidays. Are we gonna bring over and celebrate some stuff on Sanctus, even though we're back on Vera?
Probably.
So I'm very curious to see how they work that stuff. Also had me wondering, the Nakua and the Dunir celebrating Dunsandkill holidays differently also had me wondering if, because we have racial augments, I'm wondering if we'll have like Dunsandkill augments that both have. I hadn't thought about that before until I thought about this calendar.
Could be that they have their own variation of, similar sorts of things, like strength being expressed in different ways, where the Dunir might be more like being able to generate force and hit things harder. The Nakua are more about like an agile strength where they can,
That's
run and
stats
jump a little bit.
Yeah, I'm talking about augments.
Yeah, no, I just giving that as kind of an example, like, how that would actually play out in the stats and how it would play out in, their ability to move and fight in different ways could also be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm just all curious about that. Yep.
I liked when they were. I think we'll just probably pass on the Q&A because we were talking about all this other stuff. I just, one thing that made me laugh, they showed, I think it was in the environmental part, but the Pyre cult, the home art, the Pyre sketch stuff. He made it looks great, number one, like that. But I was laughing because Steven made a comment that their goal is to be seamless between the environment that these homes exist in. And then I'm just, again, I keep going back to all these skins that we have for freeholds, and that their goal, I know it's specific to the Pyre, but it just makes me laugh. I don't know. Seeing a lava flowing, 2 blocks down the road next to Harry Potter's house just makes me laugh. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's a magical world, so we have some... it stands to reason that some wizards would be able to, do that, and illusionists and all kinds of stuff would be able to make fantastical stuff that doesn't fit. We have I want to call it the Care Bear. What's this? And it's not Snuffleupagus. What's the name of the bear? The teddy bear, the giant teddy bear mount.
Stufferton.
Stufferton. Yeah, we've got Stuffertons, so we can have crazy wizards making just about anything we want.
Oh yeah, and I think you're going to be able to buy your Stufferton with Embers when the game's about to launch or whatever. However the Ember store thing works.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is it that it's not exactly the same kind? What
I'll have to go back and review. The way I understood it is that Embers allowed you to buy things that you missed during the lead up before launch, but okay. I could be mistaken about that.
Yeah, I'll look for that though. I hadn't heard that, but I'll look for it. That's good. Thanks.
Yeah. There's something else we can, I guess, kind of maybe starts towards wrapping up, because I think you had commented on this in Discord. There was they highlight the YouTube comments or something every show, and there was the comment on unlocking features like scars from sieges or tattoos from a quest, or that you've done something that you actually can then go and have your character physically changed in some way. And I think, you had made a good comment. That sounds cool, but like you're wearing armor all the time. So these are things. So I'm curious the thoughts on that.
Well, either they're going to make things that are more revealing, or you can opt to not show your helmet and people won't know that you're not wearing a helmet, or they're going to assume you're wearing a helmet even though it's off. But that's one way to do it. Another way could be opting for how what armor and stuff you have your crafters make. If I'm not mistaken about the choosing the appearance of the stuff you have made for you, you might be able to have the crafter make things where it just doesn't have certain sections of it, like where it has the metal plating and then it's got the leather underneath it. You have them manufacture it in such a way that it doesn't even show the leather, and so you can see the cool ritual tattoos and markings and stuff that's protected under what still has the silhouette and appearance of heavy armor.
Yeah, I asked a question about this on Twitter because of the ritual scarifications that we can see for the Vec and the tattoos. And what we want to do with facial features and stuff. So I was asking about being able to turn off transmog so that we can turn off chest pieces. And they said players will be able to transmog their gear. There will also be a variety of different armor types that are more open and will show details such as tattoos. So I'm hoping to start paying attention to that when we're getting these new armor sets. That's the other thing I want to say is we've seen some even mentioned Alpha 2 so many times. I was like, are we gonna get some kind of announcement? It was just a tease. But we have not seen concept art for Tulnar since Kickstarter.
And it might have changed since then too.
I'm just saying, I'm expecting they have, but we haven't seen anything in years, like probably 4 years.
They'll show it when they want to show it.
Yeah, of course. But I'm saying that we can think about when Alpha 2 might be showing up when we start seeing some Tulnar. At least
Tulnar might not be in Alpha 2.
I think, they were supposed to be, but we should at least be seeing concept art is partially what I'm saying.
I agree with you there. Yeah. What I'm going to say right now, Alpha 2, I don't expect to have the Underrealm represented hardly at all, if at all. And so if that's the case, why even represent the Tulnar? So I could see them passing on the Tulnar for Alpha 2. The other thing that I kind of want to comment real quick, they had the Milestone 1 2022 internal town hall, a 3-hour kind of review of all they've been doing this year, just last week, or I guess it would have been 2 weeks ago at this point. And that to me is kind of an interesting thing, because that kind of says, well, they've got 4-month milestone markers. So then now we get to play the guessing game. Is the next milestone Alpha 2, or is the next milestone build up so that way 4 months from now they can deploy Alpha 2? So, place your bets, everybody. Get your betting pools. Put your valid credit cards in. Whatever. I don't advocate gambling on this channel, but if that's the thing you do, go ahead.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I don't know. We're not sponsored by any gambling websites.
I'm just.
If we're going to sponsor gambling, we've got to get.
That's a good point. And how often is it every 4 months rather than 3? I'm so used to things going quarterly.
Unless they do a delay of some sort and they stagger everything 1 month back, so that way the December-January period isn't as funky. I could see that being a thing too. I would appreciate an offset like that.
My bet would not be on Alpha 2 in 4 months.
Oh yeah, I don't think so either. Also, so they mentioned combat was one of the things that we heard them that they were working on. I think didn't they mention that?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
Combat and AI and
yeah,
behaviors.
and we still haven't seen augments in play. So as we're leading up to Alpha 2, I would expect to be seeing some augments, not just the changes in the hybrid combat of tap target versus action, but also
I mean, there's just so many
starting to see
things that
some
we
augmented
expect to
action.
see. That's why I mean, I guess we really don't know where they're at with some things. I mean, the character creator looks great. Who would have known that that was at that stage when we don't know anything about so many other things?
Well, getting UE5 kind of helped a
Yeah,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. But
Oh, I'm just gonna read my notes on the combat stuff real quick. Combat behaviors over the past several months have been getting worked on. Design, engineering, VFX, character art have been prototyping combat. One example is the assassin class with daggers, dual wielded, which we might see in the future in Alpha 2 here. Trying to make it a unique combat system of its own. They've got tons of Alpha 1 feedback and have been prototyping in many ways, doing, they said focus groups, I'm guessing they're internal focus groups, trying to do different prototypes and see what feels better or worse relative to the goals of the game. Just doing blueprints and testing to keep it simple. Keenan and Adam on the engineering side have been spearheading the tools to make the ability system so the designers can prototype in more ways, in different ways, do different features. Focusing on combat weapon montages, basic attacks, and all the other parts of the prototyping process. They're not going to show anything until it's really good, as they were saying. That's going to create a marketing beat that they don't really have control over, so they want to make sure whatever people see of it looks good. Like the character creator they showed off, that's the quality of things they're going to be showing going forward. So the prototyping has just been getting faster and faster as they keep improving the tools. And so the examples of what they can do with the prototypes continue getting better. So it's basically a system that's kind of feeding back on itself. Get more tools, make more stuff. Get more tool, make more stuff. Get more tools, make more stuff. So they're getting through the prototyping process, trying to home in on exactly how they're going to have gameplay work for such a giant variety of weapon types and class primary secondary varieties and all the variances and stuff that are possible.
Is one of the nuggets that I heard from Ombwa that he's able to get his hands on tools that help him, like he's happier here with
Oh,
IS because he's able to get his hands on tools
yeah.
as
No,
opposed to
that's
some of the other places that he's worked where he hasn't had the tools that help him do his
yeah.
design.
That's one of the things they're very. Um, it seems like they're just very developer designer focused in terms of making tools that allow the teams to do the things they need to do. That if someone needs a tool to do something, there's just people on hand that can, spec it out, give a kind of timeline, do it up, test it out, and if it's good, send it over. If it works, great. Now it's part of the tools.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think I've heard Steven talk about that too, like giving the designers ways so that, and we heard this kind of with uh I guess with EverQuest Next or Landmark, like giving the designers ways that they can like quickly build a home or something like that. So if they're doing some kind of quest thing, they can build their own rudimentary homes or whatever, add some npcs and stuff like that. Well, and I guess if we're going to be able to use the content, the character creator to create our freehold guards and caravan minions, then certainly the designers should be able to whip up some npcs pretty quickly too.
yeah, Yeah. I'm definitely excited to see how that stuff plays out. It'll be nice to see what, freeholds look like once they're all set up. You've got your little vendor at the little vendor booth, and people doing their various different activities. You're going back to Star Wars Galaxies again. You got your dancer that's getting everybody's spirits up.
Hmm.
So they wouldn't have been able to develop. They were in a protected area. That meant they couldn't go out and grab more resources to build up.
I was muted through that whole thing. Sorry. I was just saying.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah. I mute when I type because I think my it picks up the keys and then I forget. I was just saying that Stephen, I think, gave something away or started to give something away in regards to the Tolnar. There was a question about whether their starting areas would be more advanced because they have existed since the apocalypse versus everyone else returning. And his answer was that it was important to remember that at the time of the apocalypse that their area was protected. At the time of the Exodus, that their portion was protected, and then he stopped himself from saying anything more about it being protected. So the question was like, okay, well, what is that like? Why was it protected, right? Also, from a lore perspective, who was protecting them? Like, why? What god or whatever stopped that? Yeah. So I don't know. That was something interesting that came out of that stream.
Yeah, it was hysterical because Stephen was like, "Whoops! I almost let that spill," and Maggie was like, "Whoops! Yes, you almost did."
And then he just didn't answer the question.
She has the mute power, but she doesn't. She isn't ready to use it. If something really comes up, she's got to be hitting that button.
And then he finished the question with, "I'm not going to give an answer," and then they went on to the next. So that was kind of funny. There was something else I was wanting to mention. Yeah, I'm losing track of mine here. So, is there anything else that kind of comes up with this particular stream?
The amount of information there is to talk about, and how little I think we still just touched on in an hour.
One thing that was fun was there was a question. Maybe we're getting into question and answers here, but somebody asked if you're out at sea and your ship gets destroyed, are you just stuck having to swim home? And he said, well, basically you could try and swim down to the bottom and drown, and maybe you could respawn, but other than that, yeah, you probably have to swim. There's consequences in Ashes, so that was pretty funny.
Well, all right. Well, we have all the questions to get to next week, so we got plenty to talk about. Actually, there was another funny one. I'll just do it now because it was brief. The very first question was something like, "Will text chat commands be in game for roleplay, not just dancing but typing words?" And that Stephen got really confused. Like wave. Yeah, those were in alpha. Like, no, you just type / and then some sort of, I smile at you. He's like, "Oh yeah, you'll be able to chat in the chat box." It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyways, yes, you will be able to chat in the chat box.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back next week and kind of continuing on with the discussion. So, everyone, have a great week.
Yeah. Till then, see you later, everybody.